When watching these videos, it is recommended that you go to your change quality settings and change the settings to the highest quality possible, which is usually 720p HD, and then switch to full screen view. Welcome back to the Introduction series. This is part 2 of Introduction to Tables. If you missed part 1 or the Introduction to Database Design, please visit freeaccesstutorials.com where you can find the video links. We're going to go ahead and get started right where we left off. So let's jump into Microsoft Access. Okay, so in the last tutorial we created the customer info table. So let's create the next table, which is going to be the customer phone number table. We can do that by moving to the Create tab and selecting Table Design. That will create a table for us where we can input the information. Let's start with the primary key, and I'm going to name that Customer Phone ID. And if you remember correctly, the primary key is designed to tell records apart from one another. And since we don't already have something like a social security number which tells people apart from one another, we have to make sure that this data type is an auto number. So Microsoft Access will create a number automatically for us, which is a unique number, in order to tell the records apart from one another. Now, as long as this record or this field is selected, and you can tell which field is selected by this yellow box over here, and it will follow me around whatever I'm clicking on. It'll go to that row. Now, as long as I'm clicked on this row, I can come up here and click the primary key button, and that will assign the customer phone ID as the primary key for this table. Okay, so now we are going to put in our first foreign key. Now, as I mentioned before, there are some who prefer to keep their foreign keys the exact same name as the primary key for which they are attempting to link to. I prefer to put some type of a prefix before the name so I know which table it's coming from. And ultimately, this particular table will be called the customer phone number table. So I would put something like CPN for customer phone number, and then customer ID, which is the exact same name as the primary key in this table. But with the prefix of CPN, I know which table it is coming from. Now, for my data type, I know that my customer ID in my customer info table is an auto number, and when I link to an auto number, I need to make sure that my foreign keys data type is a number. Next, let's put in the customer phone number. And I have a few options with this. I can choose a number data type. Now I'm just going to show you an example over here. This doesn't actually have anything to do with the restrictions that are associated with your data type. But if someone was going to type in a phone number, they would have to do it like this. It'd have to be something with the actual digits, and if they tried to do something like this, it wouldn't work. So a number is fine, but you have to let your user know that that's how they have to input the phone number or whatever type of field you are representing with a number. Now, if I wanted to make it so they could put in parentheses and hyphens and so forth, all you have to do is change it to a text. And now they can make their phone number, for instance, something like this. And they can even put spaces and so forth. And that's how they can customize their own phone number. Now, the only issue is they can also choose symbols that really have nothing to do with a phone number and put them in. So if you want to restrict them a little bit further, you can keep it as a text and then come down to your input mask. And if we click on the three dots, that will ask us to save our table. And let's go ahead and do that. Customer phone number. And it will give us several options. Now obviously we're going to be working with the phone number, so this is the option we want. But if you're going to be working with a social security number, zip code, and they have a lot of options, well, not a lot, but several options for date and time. And so you can go ahead and use these options, and it will automatically force the user to put them in the particular format that you choose. Now this is how it works. If I go ahead and type something in, it'll go ahead and move it to the next situation, and it'll bypass the parentheses and the hyphen. Now I'm going to try and put in a letter. As you can see, it doesn't work. So it restricts you to what you can put in. Now if I try to go and continue, it won't let me do that either. So I need to have all the numbers in the correct format, and then it'll let you continue. So that's how you can put in an input mask, and that will restrict your fields to the numbers that you want. Next, we can go ahead and put in the extension. And for my extension, I'm going to use the data type number. That means that my user can't put in a £sign or a star or anything like that. So if you do want your users to be able to put those in, you just change your data type to a text. Now there is still something that the user could do that could create a problem. They could put in something like 14.5. That's usually not going to be a telephone number or an extension number, and it's still a number. So I need to do a little bit more restricting. So I can come down here to decimal places. Instead of auto, I can just choose 0, and that'll make it so as my user tries to put in a number, it will not allow any decimal places, and so I know that it'll be a whole number that is going to be input. Next, we're going to go ahead and put in our phone type, and that will automatically set it to text, and that's what I want to use. Now there are some values that I know that I want the user to be able to choose from, such as a cell phone or a home phone or a work phone. And a way that I can set that up is if I come down to the lookup tab, my display control is automatically a text box, but if I choose a combo box, it will allow a list of options to come up when the user goes to fill in that particular data. Now, for my row source type, they have 3 options. You can either pull your values from a table or a query. You can pull your values from a value list or a field list. We're going to use a value list in this instance, and the row source is going to look like this: cell, semicolon, home, semicolon, work, semicolon, other. And now if I go into my datasheet view and I go to phone type, it has those options, and that's very, very useful if you want to help your user out with usability, and also they know what you're looking for. Now if I come back into design view, and there's one more option that I want to look at, which is limit to list. Right now I'm not limiting it just to the list of items that I have in there, so they can go ahead and actually delete the item that is in there and choose their own. But if I limit to the list and select yes, then they can only choose the items that are in the list that I have already predefined. Let's exit out of this table, and it's going to ask us to save. We'll go ahead and save, and then we'll go ahead and create our next table. Now we're going to do the same thing. We'll start with the primary key, customer address ID, and I want that to be an auto number. And then my foreign key, I know it's coming from the customer address table, and I want it to have the same name as the primary key in which I'm going to link to in the customer info table. I'm going to choose my data type as a number, and then street, and it will automatically set that as a text, and that's what I want, so that's fine. Now if I want to change my field size down here, what that will do is restrict the user. For instance, if I put in 100, Now the user can only put in 100 characters. If they try and put in 101 characters, it won't let them. So you can restrict your field sizes, and it will restrict how many characters the user can put in. So that can be very useful if you're going to be putting in a certain number. For instance, if you know your zip code is only going to be just 5 digits, or if you know that your state is only going to be just the first 2 digits, you can make that field size restricted so the user can't put in any more than that. And then city, and that will be a text. And I know I'm not going to want any cities more than 50 characters long, so I set my field size to 50. State, I'm going to go with 2 characters. I just want the abbreviation. Zip code. Now with my zip code, I could go ahead and choose an input mask, and that will ask me to save my table. And it reminds me that I did not define my primary key. So although a primary key isn't required, it's highly recommended. Do you want to create a primary key now? Yes, let's go ahead and do that. So it automatically set the first field as the primary key. And so if I forget to do that, Microsoft Access helps me out and reminds me. Now there is a zip code option here, but that's if you have your first 5 and your next 4 digits of your zip code. And I just want the first 5. I'm not really that worried, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel. But I do want this to be a number, so they can't put in letters or anything like that. And then I want this field to always be filled in. So there can't be any user that doesn't have a zip code. And I can do that by coming down and going to required and selecting yes. And that will make it so every user or every record that is input will be required to put in the zip code. So if you know that there's a certain field that you want every record to make sure that they can't be blank, because for instance if I go up to state, you can see that required is no, so it's not required, so it could be left blank. So if you want something to be filled in for every record, that's how you would do it. You would just make it required. Now that we have all the fields that we need for our customer address table, let's go ahead and save this, and we are going to go ahead and finish up this tutorial. Now that we have our customer table, we have our customer phone number table, we have our customer company address table put in. And before the next tutorial, I would like you guys to give a shot at these 3 tables. They are very similar to the tables that we have just finished. So at the beginning of the next tutorial, Introduction to Tables 3, we'll go through how to set these up and check and make sure you did them correctly, but it will be good practice for you. Thank you for watching this video. Please visit freeaccesstutorials.com, where you can find more free videos on Microsoft Access, and you will be able to find the next video in this tutorial series, Introduction to Tables Part 3, where we will go over the 3 tables that we just discussed for you to give a try, and we will go over how to set up our relationships between our tables. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.